The pickleworms have arrived. Today is April 24th, and right on schedule. The worms are showing up in my squash and my zucchini and my cucumbers. There are a couple of species of moths that lay their larvae in the melon family, plants in the melon family, the cucurbit family. So that includes melons and squash and cucumbers. Um, so right here, this is a pickle worm with the little spots on it. And it's been eating out the center of my zucchini that I found it in. You will see holes in the outside of your cucumbers or squash. See a hole like that. There's one on the other side too, and there it is inside. This is a more mature pickle worm. So I think they lose their spots when they get bigger. I think I actually cut this one when I cut open the squash, so I think it's dead now. But this one here is very alive. It crawled out of this blossom, which you can see a hole in there. So they get in the blossoms and then they get straight into the squash. And this one crawled out of that. So it's alive, and it's a more mature pickle worm. And there also is another kind of worm called melonworms that are green with white stripes, and you'll find them in your squash and zucchini as well. They're very similar. So they do all this damage. They eat down the center. They basically eat holes and channel through your squash and cucumbers, and they're horrible. I hate them. So yes, this is their season. I made a note to myself last year, but I think it was around April 26th when I found them the first time last year, and I made a note to myself that I should start covering up my zucchini and squash and cucumber plants at night, starting in mid-April, because the moths that lay their eggs in the plants are nocturnal moths. So the thing to do is cover your plants with insect cloth at night, and then take it off during the day so that the bees can get to it. And there's another thing, I've never used it personally, but there's also an organic pesticide called BT for short. It stands for some long word, something like Bacillus thuringiensis or something like that. I'll put a link to it in my description, and I'll also put a link to the insect screen or cloth that I use to cover the plants. But the BT is especially to kill worms, and it's organic. It's not harmful to people. So that's probably a good option, although I think you have to keep reapplying it, and I just never really have time to deal with that. So I prefer just to cover the plants so that the moths can't even get in there in the first place to lay their eggs. So yeah, every April I tell myself, and I've been thinking to myself for the last week or two, that I need to start covering the plants, and I just haven't done it. And now I'm mad at myself because sure enough, I didn't cover the plants in time, and now the bugs have found it. And actually my first year growing squash and zucchini, I didn't have this problem, and it was like they didn't know that my plants were there. But then the second season they found my plants, and then ever since they have come every year, and they keep coming. They don't just come just this month or next month. They will come all summer and into the fall. The only time that I don't see them is in the winter when it's cold. So it's important to be prepared because they're a serious pest in Florida. I think just about everybody deals with these particular pests in Florida. They're very common and they're a huge nuisance. They really can ruin your crop. They can ruin the whole plant. I mean, if you get an infestation, they will be in like every single blossom and every zucchini or cucumber fruit that you have, and it'll just, like these, I'm gonna try to save these. I mean, like this is a huge squash, and this is part of it. I cut it in half, so it was a big squash, and I got it pretty early before it got the whole thing, so I'm just gonna cut around it. And since I'm gonna cook these, I'm not real worried. I mean, I'm not gonna eat the worms. I'm gonna cut the worms out and cut out the damage that they did and just use the parts that weren't affected. But yeah, so I just wanted to share this because this is a common pest in Florida and it's a really bad one, a bad nuisance. So pickleworms and melonworms, they are really like my enemy number one in Florida. I hate them even more than armyworms because an armyworm season is even a little bit early. I start noticing armyworms usually like at the very beginning of April, like the first week in April, and then by mid-April I would say I see these starting. But the armyworms usually start out on a leaf, and you can see all the little holes that they leave in the leaves, and you can find them hopefully before they get to your fruit. But these will invade your fruit and the blossoms, and by the time you see it, it's too late. They've already infested. So, I mean, obviously if you were gonna like sell your produce, you couldn't sell this. It would ruin it. So anyway, just thought I would share that since it's such a problem, and you should be on the lookout for it if you're growing anything in the curcubit melon family in Florida. And I'll put links to some of the things that can be used to try to protect your plants from this pest. Well, that's all for now. Have a good night.